Welcome to Starting Different with my friend, actually way more than a friend. This is someone who has become family to me. John, you and I have known each other for how long?
Over 10 years now, Dino.
I'm thinking I said 10 and you said 11 or 12. Every day, folks, is a chance for us to start different. I know we're in a time of incredible disruption. We're in time, especially this current week, of incredible difficulty and complications. Every day is a chance for us to start different. I know no better person to help us do that than one of the most effective people I've ever met in my life, who's on the phone with us here today on the webcast. So I'm going to go through a little background here, but I just want to start with a reference. The universe won't allow the same, only growth or decline. It's our choice. It's our choice, folks, whether we're going to grow as an organization or decline. And I want to start with this question. What if there was a button you could push? I start with every one of these webcasts. I started with Dr. Bill Crawford. What if there was a button you could push to eliminate anxiety? I then had Hollywood actor Michael Olaso. What if there was a button you could push to be you on your best day? And John is the most bottom line guy I think I know. So let's start with the bottom line up front. John, what if there was a button that you could push to connect with your purpose? What if there was a button that would help you personally and as a business connect with your purpose for your clients, for your family? Well, you would hit that button. All right, so True North, purpose. John, you sent me a couple of documents. We're going to make one of them available to everyone if they want them. You sent me the manuscript for your book, and I know your book came out in 2014, but you also sent me a manifesto that you put together. And by the way, at the end of this webcast, if any of you want a copy of John's book sent to you, Sarah, who's John's assistant, is also my assistant. Sarah will send you either a PDF or tell you how you can get an actual copy. But John, tell me what you mean when you say True North.
Well, we go through life, try to determine what gets us up every day. What's the motivating factor to get us out of bed? And when we're pointing at our true north, a compass always points to true north. And when we get on that point, when we become more self-aware, whether it's just for yourself or to become a better leader, and you find that true north, that place where you point to a direction that is meaningful for you, where you feel that you make a difference every day, and that's where you would like to be. And once you find that, then this journey that we're going to talk about becomes not only easier but more meaningful, because you're able to interpret that for others.
And there were some statistics, John, in your book from 2014 was when you published the book. But one of the statistics, it's actually two parts, talks about how financially valuable this is, right? Not just valuable in terms of our life's purpose, and wouldn't we all want to be involved with things that we feel are our best selves? But the stats you share is that 1/3 of people don't feel, what's the word they use in the survey, John?
Engaged.
1/3 of employees don't feel engaged, and why? And the second fact, because the old time CEO with the cigar says, who gives a crap if they're engaged, right?
Well, yeah, basically the numbers are, and this has been for over 40 years, and it's a Gallup study. Maybe many of you have heard about it, but about 1/3 of people actually are engaged. 2/3 or more of people are disengaged somewhat. And so if you can get them connected and engaged with making a difference, and it's why people want to come to work today. More and more people would like to make money. There's nothing wrong with that. But people want to make a difference, and they want their job to have meaning. And if you can bring that to work, then it's something that creates jet boosters for your business.
Well, so there is a financial incentive here, because the second statistic says the 2/3 that aren't engaged are only half as productive, folks, as the third that. So when you do the math on that, it's clearly exponential. John, you're a sailor, and I didn't mean to tease you this morning, but every morning I send a picture of the sunrise to whoever's going to join me, and I had my artist create a button for us to use. This is the sunrise and a start button. This was this morning. And the reason that this picture that I sent you stood out for me is because there's 8 steps on this path. And John's going to lay out for you a path, a series of steps that you guys can follow to actually produce a strategic plan in less than 2 days. This is the workshop environment that John has delivered. He's going to give you specific examples, and it's 8 questions. John's going to walk you in detail through each of these 8 points and encourage you to consider building this plan, what he calls a fast track strategic plan, on a single page. He's also going to walk you through 3 exercises, very briefly, but you guys will get them because John is very, you know, John, you said the word was common sense that people use for you. Yeah, I don't believe that it's common. I believe you have found a way to distill things and make them simple for yourself and for others. And we're going to talk about 3 great examples. Businesses, Vistage members in John's groups. In some cases, these businesses grew to the point where it was time for the owner to move on. But we're going to talk about, in terms of reaching their ultimate goal and building the business, we're going to talk about treadmills, valves, and we're going to talk about grease. And John's going to give you 3 things to be careful of as you begin this process. So all of us know that we have stories. We're made up of stories, and your stories can change people's lives. So let's start with the background on how we met. John, do you remember exactly how you and I met? Do you remember what was the first event we met at? I don't think I asked you that leading up to here.
Well, I do remember that. Dean, you came and spoke to one of my Vistage Group events, and you were asking for feedback at that point in time. And,
yeah, I don't do that anymore. I don't do that anymore.
and so I called you up. We had a conversation. You did a 20-minute interview. And after that, we continued to connect over an extended period of time and have become friends over the years.
So you know, and I consider John family at this point. Let me just say, for those who aren't aware, Vistage is the largest CEO membership organization in the world. So in any given month, 23, 24, 25,000 CEOs and key executives meet around the world. And there are no average Vistage chairs. Those are the folks who runs groups. But I would say the average number of groups a chair might have might be 2. Maybe 2 point, I don't know what the number is now, but at some points, John has had 5 full Vistage groups. John, you also, we're going to talk a little bit about your family history. You also grew Dame Broadcasting. We'll talk about that in a second. But the 2 things that are most interesting to me, John, is this thing that you started doing around evolution. You started creating an event. Right. Give us a little bit of background, because the picture on the bottom left is me speaking at the first evolution event, and the picture up in the top left, I think, is that wonderful young guy you brought in from Canada this year at the current event. So tell us about evolution, what your thought was, and why it was important to you as a way to get this message out about purpose and helping businesses, link with their purpose.
In the documents that you had, Dino, that you held up, the manifesto was the result of working with a coach that I worked with to define what my contribution was going to be. I wanted to become better in every way that I could. And part of that was an outline for an event that would show that leaders need to evolve in the future. And that's thus the name Evolution, the Evolution Leadership Conference. Been doing it 5 years now. And the conference, which Dean started with me, started with 100 and some people, to now last year it was approaching 600 people attend the conference. And I believe it's grown because A, we give people value, but B, we're talking about purpose as the focal point, as kind of an overarching theme for everybody to kind of look at themselves and say, okay, how do we make a bigger difference? The speakers all are aware of that and weave that into their presentations. And my belief is that to be a great leader, we can't lead the same way that I did when I grew up. I was a command and control.
Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead. Because we're going to talk about how you grew up in a second.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
So, but I just want to point out that everything I've seen you do with Evolution, and so maybe 100 attendees at the first one, but 700 attendees this year, you followed the process that you outline in Fast Track.
Right.
So you growing this event, so you're someone who walks the walk and talks the talk. Now, just a brief comment. Tell us about this thing you're doing also every Friday, which you're doing right after this interview, called BizCares.
When the crisis with coronavirus, COVID-19 hit, I was doing incredible amounts of work with the CEOs that I work with on their businesses. We were talking about all the issues about whether it's finance, you name it, balance sheets, how to stay in business, how to work with employees. And I saw there was a gap, and that gap was that much of the news that we heard about wasn't great. And beyond that, we weren't having a conversation about the human condition, which is being impacted. So I started a Friday conversation. Dean, you helped me with that also. And what we did was we began this conversation talking about human beings and the impact that is on them during this time period, and not so much from a businessy perspective. And out of that came BizCares, which is a website that we have. It's bizcares.org, where we just feature businesses that are doing great things in the community. So bizcares.org. During the month of May, we did 30 days of kindness, where I interviewed CEOs and just talked about small acts of kindness that they did, and added that to BizCares. And we have plans to continue this well past the time of the coronavirus, because it's something that needs to continue.
Well, there's something that happens when John focuses on something, which is it gets done and it grows and he builds it and it makes a difference for thousands and thousands of people. And there's a secret, right? But everything's a secret till you know it, right? So I'm going to have John share with some of his secrets here. Now, Vistage Chairs, there is a curriculum sort of that they follow. I would call it a curriculum with things they do with their groups. And I just want you to talk about two things right now, if you would, John. Just briefly share what happens in a Vistage meeting in terms of issue processing. But I also want you to tell us what a host member presentation looks like and how that led you into doing your own development with your own family meeting. So tell us about those components of a Vistage meeting and how you apply them to yourself.
I think the secret sauce with Vistage that I've experienced now over the past 14 years or so is issue processing. And what that is a safe place where leaders who are not normally open, vulnerable, willing to discuss things that are happening in their lives or their companies present issues in a manner which allows the group to ask fact-finding questions, to dig underneath it to get to the real truth of what the issue really is, because sometimes what somebody presents is not really the issue. We have a tendency to be unwilling at times to really dig under and feel the truth about what we should be talking about. And this is a place where it's safe to dig under those issues and then get feedback from a group of peers that have your back. But
so I've been a member of Vistage, of a Vistage group on and off for 10 years. And while the forum is such that we can all bring an issue, the forum also is such that on any given meeting day, there's a host for that meeting. And so the host member then has their focus and is asked to make a host presentation. So give the audience a sense of what that looks like and the importance of that in terms of how a Vistage group helps a member frame what they're doing and how that led into your thoughts about your own family meeting.
Yeah, well, what the hosts are supposed to do is to present an overview of their company, kind of a strategic plan, a financial overview. We share everything, 100% of what goes on in that organization. And as part of that overall presentation, whether it's strategy, whether it's marketing, whether it's human resources, whether it's leadership, succession, whatever it might happen to be, members are encouraged then to ask a question of the group that they can then get feedback on, so that it's kind of opening your kimono entirely for somebody and letting them see underneath the veil and to see what's really going on, and then getting a group to offer that feedback to you that is part of the issue process. What I did was took this a step further, and probably 10 or 15 years ago, I started doing a family meeting, which I started with my son, some friends. Dean was helping me at the original meetings. And
Roy,
what
that's
I,
where I met. That's where Roy came in. So
yeah,
you said I'm gonna, and let me just give people the perspective. These were meetings you were running for other CEOs, and you said I'm gonna run one of these for myself
right.
personally.
So I
And so
brought in
you
another
see,
Vistage chair to run it for me because I had other people there. And what we did over time was we looked at my business plan. I looked at the issues that were impacting me. I had my three sons there, and over time, what I said was, look, this needs to be not just about me, but us as a family. And so I asked my daughters-in-law and my grandkids when they turned 10 have come to the meetings. And what we're talking about now is hopefully leaving a legacy of about the values that I want to hopefully engender in the family, as well as talking about any hard issues we have as a family where you don't ever get a chance to do that.
just a bit of perspective. There was a time where, with John having 5 full Vistage groups, and some of them requiring him to meet individually with members each month, when John was running over 500 meetings a year. This is a man who did not have to work anymore, and he's running over 500 meetings a year. So when I saw you take the step to do this, it told me that you wanted to do something different for yourself. You wanted to grow yourself. You wanted to do something different for your family. And you saw the importance of including them in the process so that they knew why you were working so hard.
Mm-hmm.
So give us a sense of the legacy. Here, I call this slide the boy in the boat. So
Yeah.
John, what are we looking at here?
So a couple things. One is that the picture of the younger person there is my dad. My dad grew up in the radio business. Our background, I worked with him for 28 years or so. We were in the broadcasting business, owned and operated radio stations. He started out, it sounds like Herb Tarlick, at a 500-watt radio station in Western Pennsylvania in a small town called Katanning, and he loved it from the time he was 14 years old. The upper picture of my dad is when he won an award for the Pennsylvania Association of Broadcasters, inducted into their Hall of Fame, in terms of what they did as a broadcaster. We owned and operated 36 radio stations up and down the East Coast.
36 radio stations. So we're talking big time. We're talking big time. Yep.
We sold that group in 1998 to ClearChannel Communications, now iHeartMedia. They bought it from us. And then the boat is my boat. That's not my dad's boat. That's my boat. His boat was originally bigger. My dad was very funny. He was a perfectionist, and he loved sailing, loved to take the boat out maybe a little bit, but he never stayed out of the marina overnight. And he spent a lot of time washing and cleaning his boat, where I took mine out and beat the crap out of it all the time and sailed it, stayed out overnight in places, and had a great time for, about 30 years of sailing that boat around.
I see you as a sailor. I see this as a journey you've been on, but I always saw the boat as a metaphor. At least I saw, and I had the great honor of meeting your father and spending some time with him in that amazing home he had. And he was a serious guy. He had accomplished serious stuff, but I'm not sure that he connected it with a legacy and with contribution the way you decided to. So I see things a little differently. When you sent me, it's probably because I started going blind when I was 17. But I make connections that other people don't. I look for shortcuts. I look for patterns. And those are what I call forcing mechanisms. The brain loves forcing mechanisms. And one of the things I saw when you sent me your manuscript and I dove through it is you were very clear in your manifesto about what your goals were and what your values were, I should say. So John, you got 4 primary values. And this is an important part of this planning process because this is where it all starts. Would you agree?
Yeah.
So tell us what the 4 values are, and I saw a pattern. I created a little model for you, but walk us through it.
Yeah. So Dino has in order what I do when I talk about with anybody when I'm helping them develop a strategic plan, when I'm working with them in a coaching environment, we look at what their values are. so that they can be clear about that on their own. And when I looked at these, I thought fundamentally, you know, I want to work with people who want to be accountable, that do what they say they're going to do. And these are non-negotiable for me. Before I talk to anybody about a price, I'm never selling them anything. I'm telling them that if you want a value proposition, this is where you should be. Want people who are accountable. I want people who are not afraid of candor. In other words, I'm not a suck up. I definitely want people that are open to be candid. I want trust as being visceral. I have their back, they have mine. And I want people who want to serve other people, more than just servant leadership. You know, basically, I call this the no asshole rule. In other words, I don't want to work with somebody who wants to take advantage of the human beings that they work with every day. I can make a choice, and I tell them that right up front. But that's me. Everybody isn't going to be that way. And so,
Right.
but this is what people have to accept if they want to work with me.
So it's interesting that in this manifesto, you actually started by talking about the things that were at the bottom of this, which were service. And then you then said trust is the next building block, candor. And as I just reversed it, it spelled the word acts, which is amazing because you are a guy who takes stuff and takes action on it. And I thought the word acts was a pretty impressive model. I can't believe you didn't think about it. I think you're just letting me pretend that I found it. But okay, let's talk about the book, John. Core values is the second part, but you actually start. Let's go through each of the 8. We're at the 20-minute mark here.
Okay.
And I want to make sure that people get value. So let's spend just a couple of minutes. This is your goal, is that they create a single page, John, that answers 8 questions. Would that be correct?
Like in working through the book, what I did was put a book together that I felt would be easy for CEOs to utilize to determine their strategic plan. And so I set up simple steps that they could do. One is to establish a vision. And this is normal language. Is a vision that describes a destination, where people are going. I know people get all bogged down between vision and mission. They should not. I think vision is critical because it drives all the other decisions.
Let's give a specific example that we're going to talk about more. You had for years an amazing member by the name of Anson, and Anson built a company called HydroWorks. Can you recall at the top of your head what HydroWorks' vision statement was?
Yeah, basically they want to touch 50,000 patients a day.
50,000 patients a day was their vision, because they knew that if 50,000 people a day were using their treadmills in these hot tubs all around the world, they were changing people's lives. Okay, so that's a vision we start with.
Right.
It's something that's linked back to people. Now, core values, second part.
Yeah, we just talked about those, but I think that people need to establish the values. When you look at the plan, the values are basically the DNA that establishes how people behave with each other in an organization. And whether you call them values, whether you call them guiding principles, they all need to be worked toward an end. And so I think that those values need to be there.
So you have four. Service, trust, candor, and accountability. I have 4 of my own that are around living, loving, learning, leaving a legacy. Something that I took from the stuff that Covey put out. So we got those core values. What are anchors? What are strategic anchors? And I use the term blue ocean anchors.
Yeah.
What would be the third thing to put on this piece of paper?
So anchors, people need to have what I would call foundational components that you are looking to build on as an organization. I do a non-linear process
that are unique to us,
your organization. And so these foundational elements are built through a process of looking at a what I would call some sort of non-linear groupings on a thing, and we try and turn them into what the key anchors are. And it's surprising to people when they see, as we go through the process, how quickly you can arrive at what those key strategic anchors are.
So key strategic anchors are the things, and you have examples and some questions for people, but things that are unique to you and unique to the clients you serve. And once you've identified those, the next step is to identify the big rocks. So what would be
the things that we want to push that are key strategic initiatives? And this is kind of what separates a lot of people from others is that so often they don't think of strategy, they think of tactics. And I think there are a few key strategic initiatives that people can look at that would make a material difference in the way that they do business. And so
And
you want to make
you
them
give a
big.
list of 10. You give a
Yeah.
list of 10 in the book.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Action steps, number 5.
Action steps would be the steps, what, by, when, that you might take. These would be tactics. That would be things that you would prepare in a document that would allow people to know quarter by quarter, week by week, month by month, how you achieve the larger strategic initiatives that the organization wants to go, and the vision of the organization.
Dashboards. What do you mean by a dashboard?
So often organizations run a dashboard that is a operational dashboard. Certainly we need that. There's not any reason not to have that. This is a strategic dashboard where we measure our progress toward the strategic initiatives that are there and make sure that we're on point for those, or that they're no longer valid and we look for something else. But that the dashboards are strategic in nature and then are supplemented by operational dashboards.
Quick wins.
Quick wins are, I would call it rapid results. People need to feel, so often what happens with strategic plans is people build them, grandiose ideas. You go spend 3 days at a hotel, eat, drink, and work hard and have a good time. I really believe that people need to have quick wins, and they need to happen at minimum in 90-day increments, 100 days, and really focus on those things so that you can have wins and keep momentum going forward.
A thing in motion stays in motion. And finally, the 8th point, execution plan.
Yeah, so in the execution plan, there needs to be what I would call the foundational components of how you cascade this through the organization so that everybody understands, one, where you're going. That's why it's a plan on a page, because when you do this, it makes an incredible difference in hiring, firing, communicating, helping develop people, your culture, and the bigger items that you execute. So big deal.
So there's 3 exercises, and you outline them. We're not going to do them right now, but there's 3 exercises that you go through in the book, and people can ask for the PDF of the book, and it's on Amazon. But again, the goal here isn't to be selling the book. The goal is to give everyone a framework. You talk about a 15-word story. And
Right.
that's the example that you gave at HydroWorks.
Right.
And I'll have you think about maybe the 15-word story for the valve company in a minute. What is the exercise, just briefly? Give them a sense of what is a cultural dig.
So culture dig is an exercise where during the planning process, we would break into teams and have people walk through the organization, or give them, between one day and the next, they would go back and work together to define all of those things that either intentionally or unintentionally represent the culture of the organization. They could be the letterhead, it could be what's up in the lobby, it could be a photograph of people's desks, it could be the coffee room, it could be 100 different things that represent kind of the norms of culture, whether you intend them or don't intend them. So
Okay.
I think that people have to look at that, because so often we have unintentional issues around culture that show up that we've never thought of.
Yeah, you gave the example of folks who were only dressing in black, and then all of a sudden their entire employee base was made of folks who were goth, and that wasn't their original intention.
Yeah, it happens. It happens unintentionally many times, that people are not thinking about it, but it just goes forward.
We've talked about anchors, and you go through an exercise in the book called Deep Anchors. Just give us a sense, bottom line results. The first company we spoke of, we'll talk about 3 real quick. What did you see happen as a result of this kind of planning process for a company that was building treadmills basically in hot tubs?
It's interesting because the company, I probably worked with them for 15 years, and over that time period, they went from a very small organization to an organization that had their therapeutic treadmills. These are not just any treadmills. These are in the Dallas Cowboys training center. Most of the NFL teams use them. Most professional sports teams, colleges use their therapeutic treadmills, as well as therapists around the country for people that have issues that they need to do. And they were able to grow to the point where about 3 years or 4 years ago, they sold the company for a significant amount of money, and the organization continues on. And they really focused as a key component in what they did on kind of this culture and the vision that they had, which was to help all these people get better.
It was
And so
about telling
everything
that
they
story
did,
and making it visual. Yeah.
right, they made it visual. And so everything they did around that was showing photographs of people being helped that they did, or videos, or they wrote a book,
All tied
just
back to
anything
their
they could do
purpose.
just to support
Yeah.
that.
I
Yeah.
remember the year I met Anson, and you and I have joked about this, but he, when I talk about the brain and information getting to the brain 30 times faster through the eyes than through the ears, Anson heard me speak or brought me in to speak to his team 7 times that year. So there's this concept of storytelling and how it resonates with the brain. So you also talk about the valve company. We're going to leave those for people to read in the book, because I
Yeah.
want you to tell them 3 cautions, John. I have 3 things that you've listed in the book to be careful of in their planning process. So you remember the 3? Because
Yeah.
we talked about it briefly, but go ahead. What are the 3 cautions you'd give them?
Yeah, well, one is that people have a tendency, depending on the size of the organization, to take on too many things too fast. In other words, we take on all the initiatives. My experience has been in strategic planning that many times people want to finish their entire strategic plan in 6 months and feel like they haven't been able to accomplish enough. And I really think that limiting the number of things that you do is key to be able to make this go forward. And also, I've had experience where I've had as many as 25 or more people in a planning process. Could be okay, probably isn't. A lot of people are very non-strategic. And so when you go forward, when you have too many cooks telling you what to do that want to go directly to execute, very hard to do. So
Think in terms of how much can be accomplished and how many people should be involved. And this concept of repetition. So you have a phrase that was used in the radio world in advertising. What would you guys say then?
yeah, we just have to repeat things 3 times before people actually hear it. They don't hear it, that's for sure.
Well, we know that repetition rewires the brain. So putting this, and it rewires the brain because it creates connections between neurons. And as neurons fire together, when we repeat stuff, they wire together. So what we're looking to do is create cues in an organization that generate routines around those things. And just to close up here, John, every single person I've had on has talked about the importance of people feeling safe. And it's one of your core values. If you're going to be embarking on change, remember that change is scary. Everyone's going through it now. The disruption, the stuff we're talking about now isn't secrets. We know from brain science that the brain is looking for shortcuts and how to save energy. So as you're thinking about the initiatives you have, there's a little tool I'm going to share with you. It's a little magic mirror. Think about creating 4 quadrants of things you could be focused on today as an organization. Think about a scale, high or low, gain in terms of the impact it can have for the organization, and easy or hard to implement, meaning pain. Try to focus on those quadrant 1 initiatives. By the way, there is brain science behind this. The brain wants to survive, that's gain, and it doesn't want to use a lot of energy, and that's pain. So, John, I'm going to put a final slide up here. Any final thoughts? Anything that we left out that you'd like to make sure we include? Because we're right about at the 32, 33-minute mark.
Yeah, the only thing that I would put an extra exclamation point on is the concept of the willingness to kind of be self-aware so that you can kind of dig into that concept of purpose for yourself and move forward in a way that would kind of reinforce the legacy that you want to leave. I think that's what really is the itch that a lot of people get to scratch at some point in time in their business career.
John, you had offered, if anyone wants a copy of the PDF, for them to email Sarah, who is your assistant, sarah@johndame.com. The book is also on Amazon if you'd prefer to have a hard copy. John, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was what we made of it. You've seen this image because I've shown it at the end of every Vistage talk I've ever given. And this is Self-Made Man by Bobby Carlyle. Man is carving himself out of a block of granite. They themselves are makers of themselves. John, I see you as an instrument. that has helped so many people make change in their life and in their businesses. I'm one of them. John, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on with me today. Have a great day. Enjoy your BizCares.
Okay,
And
thanks.
John, I'm going to close up in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, JD.